Is this happening to you? Then you're in the right place for video game training. And in this video, we're going to take a look at how to defeat the Dancer of the Boreal Valley. First of all, let's take a look at the setup. We're going to be using the sharp version of the Sellsword Twin Blades. The sharp version allows your damage to increase as your character's dexterity increases. We're going to be using a specific strategy that should allow you to avoid phase 2 completely. This strategy is intended for a melee class, but you might find some hints and tips that are helpful for other classes as well. We're also using the Grass Crest Shield on our backs for increased stamina regen. We've got the Karthus Blood Ring that increases your roll invincibility frames at the cost of defense. Pontiff's Right Eye that boosts attacks as long as attacking persists. Flynn's Ring that increases your attack if you have a lower equipment load. Chloranthy Ring that increases your stamina recovery. And we'll also be using some human pine resin, also known as dark resin. Applying your dark pine resin to the weapon will increase your damage against the Dancer, which brings us on to the next point, which is damage and buffs. I did a few tests with various different buffs. Attacking the Dancer with no buff, I did 301 damage. Attacking with a lightning buff, I did 316 damage. And attacking with a dark buff, I did 336 damage. So ideally, if you have it, the best buff that you can use is the dark buff. But if you don't have it, you can also use lightning buff for increased damage as well. Just a quick side note with this weapon setup and this ring setup, you don't 100% need all of these rings and weapons for this fight. It just helps with this strategy that we're about to do. You can gain access to this fight by killing 3 Lords of Cinder or by killing Emma, the NPC in the chair. The fight will start as you approach the altar with the Basin of Vows in your player's inventory. Make sure to apply your buff before you trigger the cutscene. I find that if you apply the buff after the cutscene, it tends to make the Dancer more aggressive at the start of the fight. So if you apply the buff before the cutscene, it means you can get an attack or two in on the Dancer before she starts swinging the sword. In this fight, positioning yourself correctly is absolutely crucial to your victory. You'll need to position yourself and try to keep yourself around her back right leg. If you imagine the Dancer as a clock, with 12 o'clock being her face, you would want to be around 5 o'clock. The main reason for this is it's really easy to see an incoming attack. So if you're positioned in this specific place, if she starts to swing the sword, you'll have at least 1 second to see it coming over and time your dodge. However, if you were stood on her opposite side, the side where she's holding her sword, you would have less than a second to react to one of her sword swipes, which is very difficult to do. So it makes your job a lot easier if you put yourself in this 5 o'clock position. You'll be able to see the sword coming on over for you and then just time your dodge accordingly. She does, however, have a grab attack with the hand that's not holding the sword. You'll be able to see the grab animation begin and you'll want to roll through it. What I try to do with any of these dodges, whether it be a sword swing or a grab, is try to place my character back at the 5 o'clock after the roll has ended. So whilst you're dodging her grab or her sword swing, try to place your character back at that 5 o'clock at the end of the roll. By doing this, it kind of manipulates the AI in your favor, so you get the attacks that are easier to see incoming, which allows you to dodge a lot smoother. Some other attacks to look out for in phase 1. She sometimes does a fire sword semicircle in the floor. If she does this, just stand over to her right hand side and maybe get in an attack or 2. Whilst you're attacking from this 5 o'clock position, it's usually a good idea to get in 1 or 2 attacks and then hold off. This is because all the time you should be looking for an incoming attack, so by spacing out your attacks, it gives you the opportunity to roll if you do have an incoming attack. You should also look out for a fire explosion. If you see an animation where she kind of goes down onto one knee, after a second or 2 there'll be a large explosion, so make sure to roll away to avoid this. You can also run in after the explosion to put in some hits to punish. Executing the next part of this fight is quite crucial to avoid phase 2 completely. When the Dancer gets to about half HP, she will then pull out another sword from the floor. At this point, you want to get directly behind her and put in as much damage as you can. Just be wary of staggering the Dancer, because if you stagger her, it will knock her out of this next animation. Before pushing the Dancer into phase 2, make sure to get the Dancer into the middle of the room, as this will massively help with this next step. After the animation of her pulling this second sword from the floor, she'll then spin around in a circle 7 times. You'll want to be as close to her butt as you possibly can get during these 7 spins. Make sure to count the spins, and on the 7th spin you'll want to roll. You have to roll on the 7th spin to avoid getting wrecked. As soon as your roll ends, make sure to put in as much damage as you can, and this should finish off the fight, completely avoiding phase 2. Just a note here about pushing her into phase 2. During the 7 spin attacks that she does, if she's not in the center of the room, then she might actually cancel and do less than 7 spins. Or if she does the 7 spins, it makes your job a lot harder to stay right behind her butt because of all of the pillars and things around the sides of the room. What I would do is, if she's pushed into phase 2 and she's at one of the sides of the room, is actually just avoid her completely and keep clear until she's done the 7 spin attacks. This is because it's highly likely that you will get caught on one of the spins if these spins are at the sides of the room. Even if you do stay completely clear of the dancer during these 7 spins, you can still count the spins and then run in and roll through the 7th spin so you can get your uptime on your attacks. I will put in a couple of moves from phase 2 in this video in case you do have to deal with phase 2, but ideally, if the strats have gone correctly, you won't have to deal with any of this stuff at all. A lot of the time in phase 2, it's just watching out for her incoming attacks, dodging through them, and then counter-attacking when you get the chance to do so. In this phase, she becomes a lot faster and more aggressive. You'll have a lot less opportunities to put in your attacks. Make sure to look out for her incoming attacks and then roll accordingly. Now that she's got her second sword, she also gets a second semicircle, so she can do a semicircle with the fire sword or a semicircle with the dark sword. You can counter attack each of these semicircles accordingly. If she does the fire one, stand on the opposite side and then attack. If she does the dark one, stand on the opposite side and attack. With enough video game training, you'll have this fight mastered in no time. Hopefully you found this guide useful and it helped you out in some way. If it did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel.